Hi, Cameron. Thanks for joining me today.
Hello, Olivia. I am so excited to be joining you.
How about you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Cameron Dobbs, and in short of kind of what my title is or what I do is I'm the manager of sponsorship content and on-air host for the University of Miami under Legends. And basically what that means is that I run a lot of different shows creating content that is for brands and aim to be sponsored by brands. So we do a lot of storytelling, a lot of fun pieces, and everything revolves around hurricane athletics. Now, in addition to my full-time job doing that, I am also a speaker, an author, a podcast host, a business owner, and so much more. So I also have my own company called Play Where Your Feet Are, and everything I just listed all falls into that as well.
Well, it sounds like you definitely keep yourself busy.
For sure, always.
So, what's your mental health journey been like?
Well, a piece of what I left out of, I guess, a background of me as well is that I was also a former collegiate athlete and coach. And a lot of that comes from my mental health journey, or maybe my mental health journey comes from a lot of my background as an athlete. And so for me growing up, I mean, it really has been a journey because growing up, I was a cynic about mental health. I did not think mental health issues were really a legit thing. I thought that, growing up in a Christian home and a Christian school and a Christian church, that, hey, you just need a little bit more prayer and better friends, and you won't have depression. You won't have anxiety. These issues will just poof and go away. And I thought it was really just like a sin issue rather than an actual brain issue. And then I faced depression and I faced anxiety. And then I realized, okay, this is a very real thing, obviously, and that there are so many incredible resources and ways to combat it. And so, what happened with my story is when I was a junior in college playing volleyball at the University of Miami, I was a starter, I was a captain, I was kind of the it girl who had my entire life together and had a plan. I was going into my junior year of volleyball. And on the court, things were great, but off the court, things were awesome as well. I was leading an organization on campus. I was hosting UMTV. I had this and that and the other, and a mile-long resume that was just glowing. I was set to graduate college a full year early and start my master's during my senior season of volleyball. And then after that, I was going to go play professionally in Eastern Europe. So I had my life together. I had a plan. I was ready to go. And my junior season starts, literally the first tournament of my junior year, this promising junior season. And all of a sudden, I make one bad block move. My hands are a little wide, and a volleyball just absolutely rocks me in the forehead, giving me my third concussion, my third brain injury within 12 months. So this is now my third brain injury within 1 year. And it then started the next 4 to 6 months of severe concussion symptoms, leading me to drop out of school, basically fall off the team, not be able to do anything. And I joke that I was literally just an avocado. I could not do anything whatsoever. I sat in my dark bedroom 24/7. I went to vestibular therapy, cognitive therapy, and psychological therapy as well. And that's when my mental health journey really started, when I started facing those struggles, because having concussions and having these brain injuries, depression and anxiety are an actual symptom of the concussion. And I had that. But it's such a hard thing when you're facing this identity in sport, feeling like even if you say you don't root your identity in your sport, it's so easy to get caught up in thinking everything that I have successfully done to this point, and the reason I am currently at this point in my life is because of the success that I have had on the court. So though I subconsciously didn't think that I was rooting my identity in my sport, it was exactly what was happening. And so now, after going through all that, I realize, and I speak so much on the fact that your identity is not rooted in your performance on the court, in the classroom, or your career. None of that is where your identity is rooted. And that's what I had to find out the hard way going through that season of pain and suffering. But as we're talking about the mental health journey for me, I had my trainer, my athletic trainer, tell me one day, she's like, Cam, I think you should go see Dr. Goldstein. And Dr. Goldstein was our sports psychologist at the University of Miami. To this day, he's still there and he is amazing. But I'm telling you, his reputation did not start out that way with me. Again, I was a cynic about mental health. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I thought that sharing emotions and weakness was you being weak. I did not think that that was actually a strength at the end of the day, showing these vulnerable signs of yourself. And so every single therapy appointment I went into, I would go in not wanting to be there, be forced to talk. He would ask me tough questions. I would probably not share as much as I probably should have. But over time, I eventually started opening up. And I remember one day he asked me just simply, he was like, why are you so sensitive to being sensitive? And that started a whole long conversation of actually a story from my childhood that I was playing intramural basketball and my dad yelled at me and said, there's no crying in basketball. And it became this big moment that I didn't realize as a little kid. But I think a lot of that was put into me thinking, oh, okay, so toughness is you're never going to cry. You're never going to show weakness. You're never going to show frustration. You're never going to show any of that. And I grew up that way. And that just was ingrained into my mind, as it is for many of us as athletes, or just many of us as human beings in general, feeling like being tough is simply never showing weakness, when in reality, once again, it's actually the opposite. I think showing your weakness and showing your vulnerability is the toughest you can be. And so through these therapy sessions, I learned to be more vulnerable. I had a lot of people around me during that time, whether it was my assistant coach, Jillian Hatter, some of my best friends, my parents, encouraging me to start being more open about not only my feelings, but also my struggles, what I was going through, and my story as a whole. So through these 6 months of really just struggling very badly, both mentally and physically, I built this pretty incredible story, and praise God today that I am healed about 99.9%. And now I'm doing just that. I'm telling my story. I'm talking about my mental health struggles. I'm talking about how even today I'm not perfect at all. I still struggle a lot. And I speak on Play Where Your Feet Are, which is all about doing your best and being your best no matter what and no matter where. And a big part of that is not that it's you have to be on your A game every single day. It's your best that day. And it's understanding and giving yourself the grace that, hey, your best one day might look different from your best another day. But if it's still your best in that given moment, that's the thing that's going to matter. And it's playing where your feet are. It's not Susie. It's not Sally. It's not your neighbor. It's not your cousin. It's not your competition. It's where your feet are. So whatever you can do in the given moment with your friends, with your followers, with your finances, with your resources, whatever you got, play where your feet are, because you're not going to get a mile down the road if you don't start playing where your feet are and taking steps where you're at today. And so I had to realize that in my recovery, not only physically, but mentally as well, that I'm not the athlete that I used to be. I can't lift as much as I used to be. And I struggled so badly with comparison and that identity crisis, that thinking that I was worthless and I was pathetic and I was embarrassing now because I'm not who I used to be. But it's just the opposite. And I've grown so much because of it. And again, I struggle on a daily basis with this still today. But I'm open and I'm willing to tell people about it because I know we're not alone, and we're not in this, and we are all in the same boat there.
Thank you so much for sharing that story.
Oh, of course. My goodness.
So, how would you say that the people around you, like friends, family, teammates, how would you say they kind of impacted your mental health?
My family, teammates, everyone surrounding me, especially during that time, impacted my mental health and my journey as a whole in the biggest way, because they encouraged me to go see that psychologist, to go find therapy, to go find support groups. That was another thing too. And that's actually one thing that I'm really passionate, is because I went to that sports psychologist for probably 4 months or so in a row. And then after that, after my body healed for the most part, I kind of stopped seeing him, but I never stopped trying to work on my mental health. So I started going to support groups. I started learning more about mental health. I started listening to podcasts. I went to conferences, things like that. And I just want to say that because for those of you who might be listening and thinking, therapy is not really for me, and I've tried it, like, don't get me wrong, but it's just not for me, that's okay. Like, you don't have to force yourself to be in a one-on-one conversation in a room with someone you don't know. For some of us, we love it. I talk for a living. So the fact that I can talk uninterrupted to a random person that is getting paid to listen to me is amazing. But if you don't want to do that, that's okay. I just encourage you to not stay quiet. And that's what my friends, family, everyone around me encouraged me to do. So whether it was me going to Chick-fil-A with one of my best friends and she's just letting me cry it out and talk to her, or I'm sitting in a therapist's office, or I'm going to a mental health conference, whatever it might be, just keep learning about yourself. Keep learning about your emotions. Keep going through your feelings. And one thing too, which I think my surrounding community and my circle of friends always help me do too, and I say this to date, is that if you need to throw a pity party, throw yourself a pity party. Do it. Feel all the feels. Go through all the emotions. Cry. Be angry. Whatever you need to do it. Have that pity party. But don't stay there too long, because that's not a party you're going to stick around at. I get it that it's okay to not be okay. It 1000% is. But I don't want you to not be okay for months on end, for weeks on end, for days on end, for hours on end. If you need to not be okay for an hour, cool. But let's improve that. Let's get out of that moment. And that's where I think a distinguishing factor between be where your feet are and play where your feet are is. Because anyone can be where your feet are. It's great. But I don't want to just be. I want to play. Play has so much joy to it. It has so much fun to it. It talks about improving and changing and continually to get better. And that's what we want to be. It's okay to not be okay for a little bit, but we can fake it till we make it all we want, but don't fake it for life. If you need to fake it for a day or two, cool. But how can we help you? That's what I want to get over. It's okay to feel these feelings, but let's work on progressing. And I think that's where your friends come in, your family come in, and they encourage you, whether it's seeing that psychologist or going to different people or just talking to someone close to you. That's where that's going to be so important.
Absolutely. I mean, we can't bottle those feelings up inside forever. Like, you have to let those out, but at the same time, as you said, you can't stay there forever. Eventually, you do need to kind of move on, but those around you are great supports for helping you do just that.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, this is asked question's a bit of a big one, but what would you say your biggest struggle has been?
Ooh, I'm going to say probably what I've already alluded to a little bit is just that overall sense of losing your identity, but more specifically, the comparison thing. That gets
Right.
me all the time. And comparison is the thief of joy. It is not, there is no benefit to it unless, which mind you, little disclaimer, we're not talking about, hey, I have a role model and it's Tim Tebow and it's everything Tim Tebow does with sports broadcasting and ESPN. And I want to be like Tim Tebow, so I'm going to compare myself to him. That's awesome. I do that all the time. Now, what I also do is the negative side of things. And it's looking at my neighbor who's in the same industry as me, and I see them get a brand new job that is where I want to be, and I'm feeling compared to them, and I feel bad about myself. But their light should not dim my light. We want to celebrate them, and it doesn't mean you're any less because you haven't gotten that opportunity yet. Same thing goes back to when I was an athlete. I still struggle with this. Transparently, I still struggle with this. Still thinking sometimes that my worth is less because I'm not as in shape as I used to be, or because I can't lift as much as I used to be. So it's not always comparison with another person, whether you know them or not. Sometimes it's comparison with yourself. And I think that's a hard one to get over because it's so inward that you know the depths of yourselves and you know whether it was good, bad, or ugly before, and you know where you are now. So that's the struggle to get over. But I know that at the end of the day, again, my identity is not rooted in anything that I've ever done. It's not rooted in my performance in any aspect of my life. And that's not where my worth comes from. So I just always constantly try to remind myself day in and day out to play where my feet are. And it's today, it's right now. The grass is not greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. And I repeat that over myself on a daily basis because it's something I struggle with and I'm still constantly trying to learn. And hey, I think that's okay.
Exactly. Now, can you identify kind of like the turning point, or was there some situation in your life that kind of helped you learn to redefine your identity?
I think it was that overall process of going through my third concussion and facing everything that I faced. I think that, hindsight is 2020. So I'm not saying back when I was severely concussed and going through this terrible time that I was like, oh, I'm playing where my feet are and I'm doing so good. And like, yeah, I'm losing my identity, but I know where it's rooted. Like I was not that person during this time. It's all hindsight. Like hindsight is 2020. Looking back, I can see where I struggled. Looking back, I can see the purpose in the pain. But when I was in the moment, though I wanted to see the purpose through the pain, I couldn't at the time. And so I think for me, as I progressively started to heal, that's when I started to see, okay, I see where this is going. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can see how this is going to be used and turned for good. I can see how this is going to create a powerful testimony. I can see how the Lord's going to use this in some magical way. And so I started seeing the light from there. And so looking back now, I'm able to build that testimony, reflect upon it, and share the things that I've learned. But it was not easy during the time. I'm grateful that I had the people around me that I had, that they guided me, though it was hard, they guided me in the right direction when I was able to feel better.
Well, I love that. Now, are there any other tools and strategies that you'd say definitely helped you cope with your mental health during those tough times?
I think going back to what you said with friends and community is absolutely huge. I joked that beforehand when I didn't think mental health struggles were really anything that, oh, you just needed a better community and prayer and church and all that, and you'd be good. And I joke about that, but there's also a lot of truth to that too, because they're going to help you. They're going to be your rock. And so whether it is something in faith, whether it's your friends, whatever it might be, having those surrounding center blocks that are rocks in your life that won't change, that's going to be huge. So whether it's, my God, my Savior as my Lord, that I know will never change, whether it's my parents who they are going to love me no matter what, or my closest friends, things that can be so stable in your life when you are not stable, that's huge. Other more practical resources or things were not necessarily during that time because I couldn't read because my brain didn't work, but I love reading. So I love reading like self-help books, Christian author books, things like that. I love podcasts. That was something that I really dove into when I was concussed because I could listen for the most part to things. I love worship music, chill music, calming music. So anytime that I'm struggling, I try to kind of seek or turn to those things. But right now in my current life, because it's not just looking back at my struggles back then, I still have struggles today, as I've said, I'm actually currently doing a fast where one drive a day. So whether I'm driving to or from work, to or from the grocery store, whatever it might be, I make sure it's silent. So I'm not listening to any music, any podcast, no phone call, no nothing. And if you know me, I am always blasting my music. Like bass is bumping for the cars a mile away. And this has been a really hard adjustment for me, but I started it, I think, in September or August, and I did it for 5 weeks, and I'm doing it again right now. And it's so helpful because it's that time that you can just think or rest or sit still or pray or talk through conversations you might need to have, or simply let your mind go blank. And for me, I am always go, go, go. My life is so crazy busy. And to just take one of those commutes home from work and not have everything going at my brain at one time has been so helpful for me to just think through my emotions, think through those conversations. It's kind of like my own little therapy session to myself. And it's been super helpful. So I think just having that time for me and anyone like me just to kind of slow down and to force yourself to slow down, because it's not easy for me at all. I remember when I first started this, it was so awkward. I was just sitting there, hands on the steering wheel, like counting the minutes till I got home. And now today I was doing it. And I think today was probably one of the best days doing it. I just felt so free and relaxed and excited for the silence, which is something that I've never been able to say in my life. So I think giving your brain time to rest and let it think the thoughts that it needs to do is really, really important.
I'm definitely gonna try that. I mean, especially for someone like yourself that's so busy, I think finding those times when you can take 10, 15 minutes to be mindful even is super important. And so finding that time can be tough, but as you said, if you're on a commute or driving to the grocery store or something, no matter how long it is, just turn the radio off for even just one way and just take that time to listen to your thoughts or just sit there with, as you said, a blank mind.
Yeah, for sure. And if you need baby steps to do it, there is actually a podcast called Mindful in Minutes. And I'm blanking on her last name, but it's by Emily something. I can't remember her last name, but Emily, and it's Mindful in Minutes. And I started listening to her when I was severely concussed because she has a sleep meditation episode. And that's what I would listen to try to help me fall asleep because I had really bad anxiety and just everything and insomnia and all the things when I was concussed. But she has a lot of great meditations and things that'll just help you sit in silence, relax, think about nothing. And so if you need to take the baby steps to start there with like a little meditation type podcast to get you into that silence, again, play where your feet are. Whatever you need to do to get yourself to that goal, you do it. Don't compare yourself to my journey. Don't compare yourself to Olivia. Whatever you got to do, you do that. You find your peace. You work on your mental health. Because again, it's okay to not be okay, but we're going to find any resource to make sure you are okay one of these days.
Exactly. And yeah, it's amazing how tough it can be to sometimes think about nothing.
So hard. It's the hardest thing ever. I could talk for hours on end, but if you tell me to sit in silence, it's the hardest thing.
Absolutely. Now we're almost wrapped up here, but I was wondering if you had any words of advice you want to leave for anyone who's watching this that might be struggling with their mental health right now.
Besides play where your feet are, because I know I've said that a lot already, I would say don't waste today waiting for tomorrow. Because so often I think that I remember at one point I was struggling with something and it was during COVID. Mentally, I was struggling with something. It was during COVID. So I was away from Dr. Goldstein. I wasn't in the office with him or in really the same state that he was in. I was in Georgia and he was in Florida at the time. And I thought about, let me text because I know that they're doing like therapy sessions over Zoom. And then I just got distracted. And I think I put it maybe on my calendar to then reach out to him, not scheduling an appointment, but like put it on the calendar to then reach out that day. But then I didn't reach out that day. And I just kept putting it off. And as I put it off, my mental health just kept taking a nosedive down south. And if I can say anything, it's don't waste today waiting for tomorrow. And whether that is applying to this, to where if you need help, reach out, get it today. If you are struggling in some way, reach out to someone, get it today. Whether you're going straight to a therapist, whether you're going to your best friend, to social media, like whatever it is. And social media as in like, if you feel obliged to share your story on social media and you just want to talk about it and you want to say what you're going through and be vulnerable, I think that's amazing. Not necessarily finding your resources on social media, because that can always, there are great things there, but not always. But anyways, don't waste today waiting for tomorrow. And I think, again, just life is so short. So whether that's thinking I'm going to put off getting help, or maybe it's thinking, I'm not going to be bold today because, it's just next year, or like, I'm not going to start my small business or my podcast, whatever. I'm going to do that when I have 100,000 followers, not when I only have 2 followers. No, don't waste today waiting for tomorrow. Do it today. Play where your feet are today. Use whatever you have right now. Be bold today. Like, go after it. I don't care if you think that it's not going to pop off right now. Do it anyway. You got to play where your feet are if you want to get to your goal down the road. You won't get there if you don't start here today. Don't waste today waiting for tomorrow. Don't just put things off. Don't just think that it's going to be a future thing. Again, life is short. Don't waste today waiting for tomorrow. Whatever that means to you, because I guarantee you, whoever's listening to this right now is putting that connection into something in their life. So whatever it might be, don't waste today waiting for tomorrow.
Perfect message to end on. Thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Oh my goodness, I had a blast. I'm so honored to have this conversation with you. I'm so glad it finally happened. And yeah, just honored you reached out. It was super fun.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
You too.